strategic analysts and also one of its most prominent media spokesmen. He's held a number of positions in the Israeli government, including chief media advisor to former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. He is currently doing research in communication strategies at the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya. Mr. Gissin, one of the major threats that Israel is facing right now, Dr. Gissin, pardon me, is the threat posed by Iran. What is Israel doing to counter this threat?
Well, I think countering this threat is not Israel's problem alone. It's a problem of the world. I think Israel has a unique role and position to play in this overall, I would say, counter-Iranian strategy, and that is to serve as the early warning system for the entire Western world.
Should Israel be leading the effort in planning the strategy, or should it wait for other countries to take the initiative?
I think there is one country that has the role of leading this struggle, and that is the United States of America. This is part of the, I would say, struggle and campaign against those who wanted to subvert, I would say, Western democracies and to destroy, I would say, Western civilization. And the United States has to lead a coalition of forces and countries that will be able to contain Iran. Israel, as I said, could play a very effective role, but it should not be the lead role. Because if Israel plays the lead role, that would, in a sense, exonerate the Europeans and other actors in the international arena who would say this is an Israeli problem, or better, they say this is a Jewish problem, and therefore we don't need to take any action. Let Israel take the action necessary. And of course that would be a mistake, would be both a strategic mistake on our part, and I think a dire mistake for the entire world.
Iran says that it wants to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. It says that it's trying to get nuclear weapons, or at least it's given every indication that it wants to get nukes. Is there any reason why they shouldn't be taken at their word?
Well, they should. We should take Iran very seriously at their word. And I think the important thing is for us is to awaken the world, to sound the bells of warning, because we have been there before. We've been the canaries of the world for too long, and following the Holocaust in World War II, it seems that the world has learned. But now we see a repeat performance, if you want, a sequel to what Hitler has tried to do in World War II, but now with more sophisticated weapons, with more sophisticated media at the disposal of the Iranians, and therefore it's a more ominous and dangerous threat. This whole concept of genocidal anti-Semitism, what Ahmadinejad says when he uses the euphemism of erasing Israel off the map, in this new world, in this brave new world with the media that we have today, television, the blogs, the internet, and with the world becoming smaller and smaller, shrinking in size, what Ahmadinejad actually is offering is to erase Israel off the map. But the next stage, which is clearly in the design of his program, is to erase the map of Western civilization as we know it.
But can Israel just wait for other powers like the U.S. to act? Maybe the U.S. will wait till Israel is gone before it feels sufficiently threatened to do anything.
I think there's important effort, coordinated, I say, and concerted effort on the part of all parties who are today either potential or real victims of the Iranian threat. And our job, because we've been there before, and because we see the writing on the wall, and we read it very clearly, is to warn the world, listen, we are not the only canary birds of the world. You are also the same canary birds, you just don't know it yet. You will stand the same fate. If Israel is destroyed, or if that design is realized, the next step would be that any other country or group of people among the human race, which the Iranians don't like, could be next in line.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the Palestinian territories. The Palestinians recently formed a unity government between Hamas and Fatah. How does that affect the strategic situation?
Well, you know, regrettably, I must say that whatever Hamas and Fatah are doing in the territories and all the efforts to establish a new government in the Palestinian territory only to remove the blockade and the boycott of the Palestinian government so that they could get money is a futile effort and a futile exercise, because today the shots in this game are not called in Gaza not in Tel Aviv, not in Jerusalem, not even in Ramallah. They're called in Damascus and Tehran. The real tragedy today of the Palestinian people and all these maneuvers of trying to establish a government that will present a nicer face to the rest of the world are of no avail as long as the Iranians decide what the policies of this government will be. And the rearming of Hamas, the military buildup that we see in Gaza, the smuggling of over 31 tons of explosives just in the last year, hundreds of anti-aircraft and anti-tank missiles, the buildup of this suicide bombers force in Gaza. All these, we see the fingerprints and the instigation of the Iranian regime. And therefore, I think what we have to address ourselves is to the main issue. The main issue is Iran. If we join efforts with the rest of the world and we're able to contain Iran, we'll also be able perhaps to help the Palestinians restore and regain their national liberation movement, which is now held hostage in Tehran.
When we're talking about the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, for decades, Israel has followed a policy of land for peace, of giving the Palestinians their own state. First of all, do you think that the Palestinians meet the minimal requirements of operating an independent state? Do they have the kind of civil society and rule of law and economic infrastructure that would enable them to be a state?
No, that's exactly the problem I was alluding to. The minute the National Liberation Movement of the Palestinians was wrenched away from them, was taken hostage by the Iranians, the Palestinians no longer are masters of their own destiny. Their destiny is determined by a radical Islamic movement who wants to use the Palestinian, or I would say spend the Palestinian people till the last Palestinian blood drop in the name of some Islamic revolution. So the Palestinians are called to pay the full price for this effort of the Iranians to establish a different type of world regime. I believe we can help the Palestinians, but they need to help themselves, first of all.
Well, when Arafat was in charge, weren't the Palestinians in charge of their own affairs? Yeah, I don't think he took orders from Iran, yet his goal was still the annihilation of Israel rather than doing anything beneficial for the Palestinians themselves.
I think, this may sound as surprising. Their curse, as well as their addiction, is occupation. They cannot live today without occupation. They're like drug addicts. When we try to pull occupation away in Gaza and say, okay, you're masters of your own destiny, we're out of Gaza. Here, we're even living behind our greenhouses, intact as they are, so that you can start developing your own economy, start in the process of nation building. They destroyed it. And they tried to pull us back with 1,700 Qassam rockets, because occupation is the only reason that they could present to their people and the rest of the world of continuing this spur of violence, this a culture of hatred that they're developing. And when you pull occupation away from them, suddenly they don't know what to do with this new gained freedom. They hate the occupiers, by the way. They hate the occupiers. They're addicted to occupation. Occupation is a good excuse, because if something goes wrong, oh, Israel is responsible. Israel should provide us money. They always think what they should do against Israel. They never thought, or they don't have a leader that is yet to come and tell the Palestinians, what should we do for ourselves, independent of Israel?
So does that mean that they simply have no potential to be an independent state and that demand should be taken off the table?
No, they have a potential, but they need the kind of leadership that they don't have today. There's a general scarcity of good leaders today around the world. And it hurts the Palestinians most of all, because had they had a Nelson Mandela, or had they had Anwar Sadat, for example, the kind of leader that loved their people more than hated us,
now in a society
then they could have moved on, because they're very talented people. They are probably the highest educated group of Arabs in the Arab world.
Is that because Israel has built universities for them?
Israel built universities, but they went around the Arab world. The Palestinians are considered the most highly educated people and very intelligent people. But they suffer from a lack of loving leadership, I would say.
Now, where is that leadership going to come from? They have a culture in which their media castigates Israel all the time, blames everything on Israel. Their schools teach children to hate Israel. How is the kind of leadership that you're talking about going to develop in this type of situation?
Well, as I said, only if we stand fast and we prove to the Palestinian time and again that through their continuing effort to build hatred against Israel, they're only going to destroy themselves. Now, if that is what they want to do, we can't help it. Look, we can write the sequel to Saving Private Ryan, which is called Saving Private Mazen. Okay, Abu Mazen is their leader. He's the kind of leader that has the potential of moving the Palestinians away. But he claims he doesn't have the strength, he doesn't have the power. And if he's not willing to really enforce his leadership and present the Palestinians with an alternative course of action to what Hamas is offering and trying to make accommodation with Hamas, the Palestinian will come to a dead end very quickly.
Speaking about Abbas, do you think that his desire to destroy Israel is any less than that of Hamas? Even though he claims to be interested in peace, he has said many times that there will be no peace unless there's a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital and Palestinian refugees get the right of return not to the Palestinian state but into Israel proper. He says there will be no peace unless these conditions are met, which Israel has found unacceptable.
Yeah, well, you know, we'd like to give it the benefit of the doubt, so to speak. Okay, we will, for us, for the Israeli people, one must understand peace comes as a natural choice. Because this is the way we were brought up. Peace is part and parcel of our tradition, our heritage. The book that we bequeathed to the world, the Bible, the world peace appears hundreds of times. And so it's a natural choice. So we're willing to give the benefit of the doubt to those who claim, look, they want to make peace. But of course, he must meet the test of reality, of results. In other words, if you really want peace, then, and you want a two-state solution, then the right of return cannot be implemented or accomplished in the state of Israel. There can only be the right of return to a Palestinian state. So hopefully there can be some rationality, but in order to move this forward, he must have sufficient strength, sufficient power at his disposal in order to make that as an alternative policy to the policy of fratricide, of genocide, of suicide that the Hamas is offering.
Well, Israel has been propping up Abbas for years as a counterweight to Hamas. They've been giving him weapons. They've been giving him financial support, political support. Has that really worked? If his desire is to destroy Israel just like Hamas, would that ultimately be self-defeating to support him?
Well, we made it very clear that we're willing to give more opportunities to Abu Mazen to prove that he's capable of doing it and not immediately jump to conclusions. But of course, if we see the military buildup in Gaza continuing unabated, if Abu Mazen loses really control of the security forces in Gaza, if he's not able to control and contain terrorist activity, then we will have to take action and we will have to go in and clean up what is happening in Gaza. We cannot allow Gaza to become another stronghold or of the Iranian regime, another Hezbollah stan, if you want, or a copy of the Hezbollah model that we have in the north.
Isn't that precisely what it's on the path to becoming right now?
Yes, that's true, but still I think the opportunity to change course is still there in the hands of Abu Mazen, in the hands of Fatah, and most importantly, as a result of the unraveling of the Iranian plan for the Middle East, it is the responsibility of the moderate Arab countries now, those who have built up the Palestinian issue, also to take the responsibility in resolving it. And they can help a lot by putting pressure on the radical elements among the Palestinian camp, definitely Hamas, Islamic Jihad. And if Saudi Arabia uses its leverage in the right way, there is a hope and an opportunity for the Palestinians to change course.
Now, Hamas is pretty clear that it's waging a religious struggle. They're very clear. It's not about land. It's not about a Palestinian state. Israel's existence is a religious affront to Islam and must be destroyed for Islam to regain its honor. And they are positively eager to become martyrs. The first day the Hamas legislature met, one of the legislators said to standing applause, "Jihad is our path. Martyrdom is our highest goal." Their highest goal is to die fighting Israel, not to benefit their own people, but to fight until they die and become martyrs. I mean, what kind of pressure can you put on people who want to die for their cause?
Well, that's why I'm saying a key role in this effort to try and moderate the Islamic Arab movement lies with countries like Egypt, like Saudi Arabia, like the Persian Gulf countries, like Jordan. Because if they don't take that step, then the rest of the Arab world will be led down to a road of self-destruction. And there are so many challenges facing Arab countries today, challenges from the environment, from the warming of the globe, for lack of water, poverty in those countries. And the only way that they'll be able to stop it is if they're able to stop this wave of hatred, this tsunami wave of hatred that is engulfing the Arab world and sapping away all the energies that the Arab countries, the Arab people could otherwise spend in order to improve their life conditions. So it's a choice between, I would say, a strategy of life and a strategy of death. And I think therein, the Arab moderate countries can play a very significant role because the threat now faces them as well. In the past, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, even Jordan, thought, well, we take the Palestinian problem, we dump it on Israel. Israel will be the dumping ground for that problem. Or Lebanon. And in Lebanon, we can dump all the problems that we can't solve in our own country. But it's coming back to them. Al-Qaeda is coming back to Saudi Arabia. Al-Qaeda and the radical Islamic groups are today instigating more bloodshed in Iraq, among Arabs than any other organization in the past. And Iran is pulling the strings. So once they realize that the threat is not from Israel, and the real threat to their very survival and existence lies from the ideology that they themselves developed, there is hope that they may change. And if not, all we can do is continue to be strong, develop our country with the help of our friends in the United States, with the help of the Jewish community around the world, and continue to lead and develop a Jewish democratic state that is based on the principle of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because, mind you, Israel is a democracy, and when I speak on campuses, I always point out the similarities between Israel and the United States. But there's one big difference, because Jews around the world and Jews in the United States can acquire and have life and liberty here in this big democracy. But the pursuit of happiness for Jews can only occur in a Jewish democratic state with a Jewish majority in the Middle East.
Well, one of the issues that's often raised in Israel to justify giving up land is the demographic issue. In other words, every area that has an Arab majority should be given to the Arabs. Is that ultimately self-defeating, though, because if the Arab population is growing faster than the Jewish population, then maybe there's no part of Israel that can't go Arab eventually?
Well, first of all, the data is not that accurate. I think, first of all, the Jewish population inside Israel is growing at a faster rate than before. The Arab population within the boundaries of the state of Israel is declining compared to So the question is, how do you create a Jewish democratic state within secure borders that has a Jewish majority in it? So you can manipulate the borders. You can't manipulate very much the demographic. So you have to change the borders in such a way that within those boundaries we will have a solid Jewish majority. Jews cannot live in the Middle East in a democratic country unless it has a Jewish majority. That's a fact. We can manipulate the borders, give away some territory that we think would be a burden to carry because it has a large Arab population. But we must retain those blocks in which there is a solid Jewish majority, in those places where, in order to ensure that we have a Jewish state, a democratic state, and also secure borders.
Speaking of Israel's government, there's a major crisis of confidence in the government right now. The Olmert government has by far the worst approval ratings of any government in Israel's history. Does it look like they may just have to resign very soon and go to new elections?
Well, look, by the way, the crisis of leadership that Israel is suffering from today, and I'm the first one to admit it, is a crisis that we see throughout the Western world, not just in Israel, in Europe. I would say that there are questions about leadership even in the United States, although President Bush has done a great deal in order to raise the banner of Western values and democracy against the threat that is emanating. The crisis is an internal Israeli problem. I think the people of Israel will have to decide after the Commission of Inquiry, the Vinaigrette Commission, publishes its reports, and after all the data is brought in about the performance and conduct of certain members of the government, whether they want this government to continue to govern. You know, it's like in a company where you have once a year an assembly of all the stockholders, and they decide whether the management of the company is worth continuing leading the country. And it's clear that the people of Israel have lost their confidence and trust in this present government. It's not just a question of popularity. No, it's not a popularity context here. The people of Israel are a winning people, and they want their government also to be winners. And if they see that the government is losing and not fulfilling their expectations, then they have the legitimate right to change the government and ask for a different leadership. And I think that was eventually going to happen in this very rather long and painful, excruciating process that we're going through. But meanwhile, we got a lot of things that we have to do. I'm here on behalf of the Jewish National Fund, and I'm doing advocacy for Israel, advocacy for Caravan for Democracy, advocacy for projects that the Jewish National Fund is doing in the Negev, because we can't just tell the world, wait a minute, we have a problem we have to solve. Meanwhile, everything comes to a standstill in Israel. We don't develop the country until we resolve the crisis of leadership. We're a strong people because throughout generations, throughout the years, for the past 150 years, always there were few people, pioneers, who led. And even when the official leadership was reluctant and was unable to provide guidance, there were always groups of people among the Zionist movement who picked up the banner, who moved forward with vision, with determination. And I think today we're in a similar situation. Yes, there is a crisis of leadership. The people of Israel do not trust their government today. They perhaps require a change in government, but they never lost their winning spirit. You see, the reason that Israel is such a successful society economically, in various walks of life, in medicine, in nanotechnology, in biotechnology, in medicine, in all these things, is because there is a winning spirit to the society. It's not by coincidence that Warren Buffett came and bought a company, an Israeli company, which is the most high-risk zone in the north, company built by Steph Ertime, who came to Israel 70 years ago, built a marvelous industry, and then put it on the market for sale. Warren Buffett bought the company without visiting Israel. And when asked, why do you buy this company? You know, you should understand the risk involved in buying a company in Israel at the most riskful area of the northern part of Israel. And he said, no, I don't make business with countries. I don't make business with governments. I make business with people. And these people who built this industry are winners. And I'm buying from winners, so he was willing to buy it for $4.5 billion and not $3.5 when it was listed on the market.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Israel's relations with the United States. The U.S. gives Israel something on the order of $3 billion a year. What does the U.S. get for its money? Is this just a gift? Is it charity? Is it an investment? What is the U.S. getting back for that?
It would have had to spend 10 times that amount. Several studies were done by that. I think there was Senator Boschwitz once did a study about that. 10 times that amount in order to counter the existing threats that the West is facing today from the Middle East. So $3 billion is a very good investment in terms of investing in another democracy, in a democracy that is strong, in a democracy that is able to deter and prevent, I would say, this new wave of terrorist groups and the Iranian threat from moving forward. Just the last war, you see, with all the, I would say, the performance of Israel, the performance of the army, notwithstanding, which we could have been, the Lebanon war, we have unraveled and exposed to the world the Iranian threat by the fact that we reacted the way we did react, and we showed the world what they were building there. 13,000 rockets. I mean, that some of the largest sovereign states in Europe don't have 13,000 rockets, and that's what Hezbollah had aimed at Israel. And the long-range rockets were operated by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. This was the advanced vanguard or elite forces of the Iranian army practicing or maybe the preparatory movement in World War III.
Do you think that Israel failed in Lebanon by not putting an end to Hezbollah? A lot of people say it didn't accomplish any of its goals. It lost its deterrent ability because Hezbollah was still standing at the end of it.
Well, it's a mixed picture. We could have done better, there's no doubt. We could have wiped Hezbollah from the south. But as it is, with whatever we did, with all the shortcomings of performance, we still accomplished a great strategic goal by alerting the world, particularly the moderate Arab countries, look, this is what is waiting for you if we don't stop Hezbollah. It's not a fight against a local terrorist organization. This is a fight against a struggle, a campaign against the advanced elite forces of the Iranian army. That's how it should be looked. And this is just the model that they want to implement, a war by proxies in other parts of the Middle East. And they went right away and tried to implement it in Gaza. And now in Iraq, they're trying to implement the same model of a war by proxy, by terrorists that are imported into Iraq from abroad with the help of Syria, by using the same explosive charges that Hezbollah is using in South Lebanon, that Hamas is using in Gaza. The modus operandi of these groups is all the same because the writing is on the wall. It's written in Persian, and the fingerprints are Iranian.
So wouldn't Israel be doing a good thing against Iran to destroy Iran's proxies, such as Hezbollah or Hamas, to the extent that they're a proxy of Iran? Wouldn't that be a good blow against Iran to do something to these proxies?
Well, definitely to these proxies, and I think it's not just a question of destroying them militarily, because they could always rebuild themselves as long as they have Syria, which plays a pivotal role as the major supplier of both the Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, as well as the insurgent groups who are operating against the United States in Iraq, both Shiites and Sunnis. Syria is the major logistical base and support for these groups. And if pressure was mounted on Syria, and if an ultimatum was presented on Syria, and then if necessary, some military force is used in order to force Syria to seal its borders, then the situation would change drastically.
Now, some people say, in fact, a lot of people in Israel say that Israel cannot defeat its Arab enemies. The most it can hope to do is manage the conflict into some kind of stalemate. Do you agree with that Israel can't win, it can only hope to achieve a stalemate?
No, I think it's a question of the definition. What do you mean by winning? What is the definition of winning?
Well, where the enemy gives up, like what America did to Germany and Japan in World War II, that was winning. They lost their capacity to make war. They had a total change of government, which forced war in the future.
Well, today it's a different environment. I don't think Israel alone can win, quote unquote, against the entire Arab world, unless you decide to change the nature of war and move into a non-conventional war, and we're trying to stop it.
But what about just the Palestinians, considering that one front of a larger conflict? Is Israel capable of defeating the Palestinians so that they cease being a threat?
Well, I think in defeating the Palestinians, we must use not only weapons on the ground, and that's just military force, but you have to convince the world that we have done everything in our effort, but the other side is not willing to accept it. The other side is the side that refuses to accept the Palestinian state. That the rejection of a Palestinian state is not by Israel, it's by the Palestinian themselves.
Hasn't it already been well established by this time?
No,
how much more proof is needed?
Not sufficient understanding among the European countries. But look, when you use public diplomacy and you use the media effectively, you can make a change. Look, the Europeans were not willing to accept that concept of the three conditions that were stipulated about the conditions for negotiating with the Hamas government: recognition of the state of Israel as a Jewish state, renouncing terrorist activity, accepting all previous agreements. But under the pressure, first, of our withdrawal from Gaza, and second, when we said, look, we're ready to deal with you, the only thing we want is that record. And now the European countries are standing, I'd say, quite firmly on these three principles. And these three principles force the Arab countries and force Hamas and the Palestinians to come to terms with this reality. So I'm saying there is a way to win this war, not just by military means, but by getting enough political support from your country, from Arab countries, from European countries. And we have today a very important leverage. That is the Iranian threat. If there is a common threat to all these countries, then by God, the way to deal with that threat is to wrench away the Palestinian conflict from the hands of the Iranians. and try to resolve it. So that's the hope. Otherwise, look, we are going to stay in the Middle East because that's where we originated. It's true that the struggle is Sisyphean. We have to push the rock on the top of the mountain, and then it rolls back on us, and then we push it again, and then we roll back on us. But I think that's the destiny of the Jewish people. That's the struggle for the quest for peace, for democracy, for freedom, in a world that, by and large, does not accept it yet. This is our mission. This is why we are here today, and that's why we survived for the past 4,000 years.
Now, you mentioned public relations a little while back, Israel making its case, convincing the world of the justness of its cause. A lot of people feel that Israel's public relations are very poor, that the press does not treat Israel well. It goes out of its way to justify the Arab positions and to undercut the Israeli positions. First of all, do you believe that Israel, in fact, gets much worse international press coverage than it should?
Well, it's almost a common feature of Israel's presence today in the world that it's the bad guy of the world. Everything bad that happens is a result of Israel. Israel is the excuse, the scapegoat, whatever you want for the entire, I would say, international press when this happens.
But shouldn't Israel be able to answer those accusations effectively?
Should. But not just by using the established media, but by using the internet, for example, the blogs, the website. You have to carry the war into enemy territory. This is war. This is war. This is war over the hearts and minds of people of the world, over the hearts and minds of the Arab people. And we have the talent, we have the capability, we just didn't use it effectively, not in the past wars. And when we talk about Israel's problems, we first have to redefine it. Israel does not have a public relations problem. Israel has a problem of contending with threats that emanate from various theaters on the ground, in the air, in the airwaves, and even in cyberspace now. And in order to counter that threat, you have to come up with new methods of fighting. You have to come up with new forces. The new forces may be young kids who are so adept with computers, who know how to use the blogs. The new methods of warfare, and this could be by embarrassing and ridiculing these Arab leaders or the Iranian leaders who are calling for the destruction of the world.
But to get credibility, don't you have to have a strong and consistent message? For example, the Arabs say that regardless of all the violence and suicide terrorism, the bottom line to the whole conflict is that Israel is sitting on land that it stole from the Arabs. That's the basic accusation that underlies everything else. How can Israel defeat this accusation that it's living on stolen property?
Well, first of all, because we were there first. It's about time that Israel stop apologizing and say that we took the land. We didn't take the land away from them. This land belongs to us. It belonged to us for 4,000. We were there before there was any Arab tribe. We were there at the inauguration of Western civilization 4,000 years ago, at the cradle of civilization in Iraq. That's where it started. And we deserve to have our own piece of land where we originated, where we were born, and we're not denying other people the right of self-determination. They should not deny our right of self-determination. You can't have it both ways. You can't have the Palestinians have a right of self-determination, the Egyptians have a right of self-determination, but Israel, the Jewish people, don't. Why are we singled out? Why? Because we came 4,000 years, because people can't remember even, and don't have the memories of where we came from. We do remember. And we have proof of where we came from, where other tribes perished. We have a book to prove that we were there at the inauguration.
Does Israel undercut its own claim to the land when it recognizes Arab national claims to the same land? Because the Arabs might say, well, if you're willing to even consider negotiating about this land, that's the proof that you don't really own it, because if you really believe that you owned it, you wouldn't even talk to us about giving any of it away.
No, because I think that's wrong. I don't think that Israel says that, because we are willing to negotiate, we give away the basic principle of the birthright of the Jewish people. No.
But do the Arabs say that?
Well, okay, they could say it. They could say it today. They'll say it tomorrow. We will stand for what we believe is our inherent rights. We'll be willing, as I said, to negotiate on some of the territory so that there will be a peaceful Palestinian state living on our border. But we will never accept a terrorist state on our border. For that, we're not giving up. We're not giving territory, giving away territory. We're willing to make concessions on the size of the state of Israel so that we create a hostile state on our border. No country in the world will do it. But because peace is part and parcel of our being, of our culture, we are willing to take risk on behalf of peace. And part of that risk is saying, okay, if you really want to live in peace with us, okay, you have the right to have a state of your own. But that's the only place where Palestinians can return to. They can't return to the Jewish state. You want to live alongside Israel peacefully, fine. You don't want to live alongside Israel peacefully, you won't have a state, period.
Well, Israel seems to be continuing on the path of making concessions, no matter how many times the Arabs say that they won't make peace unless they get everything. Israel still seems to be making more and more concessions. Does there come a time when Israel says, okay, the Arabs have proved to us that they have no interest in peace, and therefore there's no reason for us to make concessions, since no concessions could ever be enough. No matter what we give them, they'll always want more. So why not stop making concessions altogether, take back the ones we've already made, and accept the fact that we have to hold the land by force because there's no other way?
I think the situation in the Middle East is dynamic. Things are changing in the Arab countries as well, and faster than the Arab regimes can take hold of or determine. There is a radical movement in the Arab world, but on the other side, there are moderate elements who are trying to wrench the destiny of the Arab nations away from the radicals and move to the future and be part of globalization. So we want to give it a chance because we believe that the Middle East can change its face. We could still live as a isolated island, or if you want, a lonely surfboard on top of a tsunami wave. But I think our destiny in this region is to live in peace with our Arab neighbors and try to convince them that peace will benefit them much more than war. That does not mean that we have to give up our capability of fighting back and hitting back and winning. And in order, the winning, Israel as a winning society does not depend only on its military strength and on its ability to win every military confrontation. It depends on their ability to show the Arab countries that we're winning not only in military field, that we're winning in medicine, that we're winning in science, in technology. And if they want to be winners, they better join us, not fight us.
But is it possible that Israel's success makes the Arabs hate them all the more? Instead of saying, these Jews are doing something right, let's learn from them, it's more like, these Jews are showing us up and making us look bad, let's kill them.
Some of them do it, and that, of course, is the core problem that you alluded to, and that is a culture of hatred that has been continuously promulgated, that's been continuously nourished.
It's cultivated. It's not an accident.
It's not an accident, yes. But then again, because these countries are not democratic, therefore their leaders have a responsibility to control it, to contain it. In Egypt, they contained it. They didn't eliminate it. In Jordan, they contained it because they decided that peace with Israel, or I would say normalized relation with Israel, is more important than engaging in this self-destruction of teaching the younger generation to hate rather than to love themselves. Because the choice is not between hating the Jews and loving the Jews. The choice is between hating Jews and loving yourself. And once there will be an Arab leader in the Palestinian territories, in the surrounding Arab countries, which will tell his people, enough is enough. I hate the Israelis, but I love you more than I hate them, and I'm willing to do for my people more than I'm willing to do against Israel, then maybe the Middle East will move to a different path. And if not, then we'll be there telling them very clearly, look, you can deal with us and you get a good deal. But if you mess with us, we're going to kick your ass.
Well, where is the momentum in the Arab world now? Is the momentum on the side of the moderates, or is the momentum on the side of the jihadists?
Well, I think the Arab world today is at a crossroads, and I think the realization is dawning on the leaders of the more moderate Arab countries that they have to make a choice. If they go with Hamas, if they go with Iran, if they go with Hezbollah, they're going down the drain. And if they decide that they really want to take their people into a brighter future and enjoy the benefit of globalization, enjoy the benefit of free trade, enjoy the benefit of the new technology, they have to move in a different direction. I think the war in Lebanon served as I would say, as a turning point in the thinking in the Arab world. It has to be encouraged. The fear from Iran may be the catalyst to change the perception of the Arab world of themselves and of their relation with the rest of the world. But it's a touch-and-go situation. It depends how different Arab leaders will do and act when they see this new threat. Threat can bring paralysis. Threat and fear can bring paralysis, as we know it's from animals in the jungle. At the same time, the fear can also create a new situation where it motivates the Arab country to take a different course of action, and that is our hope. We continue to hope for peace. And by the way, this is the holiday that we're celebrating. The Passover is the holiday of hope, the holiday of new beginnings. Every year, we celebrate it again. So even though the past year was bad, the hope for the next year are good.
Is there anything that Israel would absolutely refuse to give up under any circumstances, even for the sake of peace? Or some principle so vital that it's absolutely non-negotiable? For example, the Temple Mount, the most important religious site in Judaism. Would it hold on to the Temple Mount regardless of who it had to fight to keep it? Because some people say this is really the epicenter of Judaism. If the Jews will give up the Temple Mount, there's nothing they won't give up.
Yeah, I'm in the opinion that when it comes to Jerusalem, Jerusalem being the united and undivided capital, not only of Israel, but of the entire Jewish people, it's not up to us alone to make a decision on that. And I believe that the majority of the Jewish people and future generations who have not yet been born are of the opinion that Jerusalem should remain the united and undivided capital of the Jewish people. There's no other country in the world that divides up its capital or gives up its capital. Certain arrangements in the process or within the framework of establishing peace with our Arab neighbor can be found in order to accommodate the religious rights and the freedom of access of all religions to Temple Mount without violating the sovereignty over that area, which is Israeli and Jewish. I mean, that has been the case. The only time when free access was provided to all three religions was since Israel, 40 years ago, liberated East Jerusalem and united the city. So those issues which are outstanding, the status of Temple Mount, the status of worshipping on Temple Mount, that could be resolved. But if the Arab countries state, Jerusalem is the battle cry for the Islamic Jihad, then definitely there's no reason for us in the world to come to any kind of accommodation that would jeopardize, I would say, the very rights that we have over the city that has been the cradle of the Jewish people.
How does Israel see its long-term future right now? Are people thinking 10, 20, 30 years ahead? Does Israel see itself in 30 years as a small, truncated state surrounded by hostile Arab states, including the Palestinian state? Or does it see itself expanding into its biblical territories with the Palestinians ceasing to represent any threat?
I don't know. After the destruction of the Second Temple, prophecy was given only to the fools. And you look into the crystal ball of the Middle East with the shifting sands and changing weather patterns, as you see, with the tsunami waves rising. It's very hard to make any predictions.
But as far as the goals, how does Israel define its permanent interests? What are its permanent interests?
I think it's very clear and it's unequivocal. Israel wants to continue to be the magnet, the attraction point for Jewish people to live, because Israel, by definition, is the national reserve for an endangered species. The Jews have been endangered throughout the centuries, hunted down, persecuted, lost 1/3 of our people, finally only to realize that only if they develop and build a natural reserve in their own natural habitat, like they did for extinct animals in the jungle in Africa, then the Jews can survive. And today you see that Israel is, first of all, the largest Jewish community in the world. The number of Jews in Israel exceed by far any other single Jewish community, including the United States. So that's one thing. Then it must be a democratic state, because that's part of our values. The democracy that we practice in Israel does not come from copying the democracy in the United States. It comes from our biblical sources. It comes from where we came from. It's ancient, like the time, and you find all the elements of democracy there in our book, in the Bible.
You're saying that Israel needs to embrace its heritage, because there are many people in Israel who say the path to success is to abandon our religious heritage.
There's no way. I think the very existence of the Jewish people, I would say almost eternal life that the Jews as an entity achieved was as a result of their belief. When Mark Twain visited Israel, Palestine in the 19th century, he wrote a diary about it. He said that the only people that he found there in Israel, in the land of Israel, that have achieved eternity, that will continue to survive, are the Jewish people, because they never lost hope of returning to their ancestral homeland. So all the things that you're asking me, or some people say, discard those people, become a normal group of people, that is the one thing that we can't do if we want to continue to survive as a Jewish people, in a Jewish state, in a democratic state, with a Jewish majority. Those are the principles that will enable us to continue to survive throughout, I would say, the centuries, to provide for our people, and also to continue to make those enormous contributions that we have made to the human race and to Western culture.